In this unit I'm going to show you how to make a curtain wall from scratch in Revit. Just before I do so, I just want to explain the basic building blocks of what makes a curtain wall in Revit. So if we look at this simple example, first of all we have the overall piece of wall. So we have an instance of wall. I can select and we can see in the properties palette that it is a curtain wall of the type curtain wall empty. I'm just going to deselect that for a second. So that is the very basic top level building block. You need a piece of basic curtain wall. Onto that curtain wall you then add curtain grid lines, and you can see if I hover over you should be able to just make out the dashed blue line, which is a curtain grid. So we add curtain grid lines to our basic curtain wall. We can alter the position of those grid lines. By adding grid lines, that has the effect of subdividing the wall into a number of distinct separate panels. So I can actually pick out one of those panels to show you. So if I select that, that is a family in its own right. So we look over to the properties palette, we can see that that is a system panel and the type is glazed. And finally, on top of the curtain grid lines we can add mullions. So again I can select a segment of mullion, and the mullion is a Revit family in its own right, and that can have different types. So there's a couple of different mullion families and types loaded into this particular project. So the mullions are hosted on the grid lines. So just very quickly to run over that again, building up a curtain wall from scratch, we start with a single piece of basic curtain wall. To that we add a number of curtain grid lines, horizontal and vertical, in positions that we define. Adding the grid lines causes the wall to be subdivided into separate curtain panels. We can then swap that out for different panel types if we wish, and I'll show you how to do that in a few minutes. And finally we can add to our curtain grid lines mullions, and again we can choose the type of mullion that we want adding, and we can have different mullion types on the horizontals and the verticals. Again, I'll show you how to do that later in this unit. Okay, let's build our curtain wall from scratch. So I have a blank project. If I go to Architecture, Wall, access the drop down type selector. Remember from our unit on walls we've got different groups: basic wall, curtain wall and stacked walls. So if you go down to curtain walls and choose curtain wall empty, which is just a blank piece of basic curtain wall, placing this wall into the project is just the same as any other basic wall. So click a start point, click an end point. I'm just going to hit the modify there to cancel out of the wall command. For this unit I'm going to keep the example pretty simple, so I'm just going to have a single piece of curtain wall. If I just quickly switch to the 3D view just to show you, there is our wall that we've created. If I zoom right in, you'll notice it does have a thickness. At the moment it is a single curtain panel. It just happens that the curtain panel is the same size as the instance of curtain wall, and that's because we haven't subdivided it yet with curtain grids. So now we have a basic piece of curtain wall. Let's start subdividing it with curtain grids. So go to the Architecture menu, Build Panel, Curtain Grid. I'm going to hover over the edge of the curtain wall, and you can see Revit is offering me the opportunity to place a curtain grid, and if I hover over the vertical edge, it offers me the opportunity to place a horizontal grid line. So I'm just going to go and place some grid lines at random. So with each click of the mouse, it places a grid line. I'll do some horizontals. And I will hit modify to cancel out of the grid line command. If we zoom in right to this junction here, you can actually see that the curtain grid has subdivided that overall panel into a number of smaller panels. So if I hover over the edge of the wall, you can see that it acts as a complete single instance still. It happens to be a curtain wall. If I use the tab key, now the tab key in Revit, if you tab while hovered over a number of elements, you can cycle through different selections. So as I hover over the middle of the curtain wall, you can see each individual panel that's been formed, and they were formed automatically just by subdividing the first panel by the use of grid lines. If I select a curtain panel in my curtain wall, just use the tab key to be able to pick one out. Let's select that one. You can actually see that it's a system family. It's called a system panel in this case, and its type is glazed. And there it appears in the type selector. And just like the other families we've looked at, you can edit type, duplicate, give it a different thickness, even give it a different material. We can also load in additional curtain panels from our library, and I'm going to show you how to do that towards the end of this unit. So we've got our piece of curtain wall, which has been subdivided into a number of curtain panels by the use of curtain grids. All we need to do now is add mullions to the curtain grid lines. So if I go to Architecture, Mullion, if I look in the type selector, I have a choice of mullion families to choose from. So I am going to stick with rectangular mullion 50 by 150 mil. Now it's important to note that mullions are hosted on curtain grid lines, so I can't just place them anywhere. You can see that they're only going to go onto curtain grid lines, and as I hover over that curtain wall, you'll see the dashed blue lines, the grid lines themselves highlight, offering me opportunities to place these mullions. So if I go ahead and click on a grid line and I zoom in, you can see that that particular mullion family and type has been applied to the grid line, and I can click around my piece of curtain wall to add mullions where I need them. If you look towards the end of the ribbon, you can see there are options there to add mullions to all grid lines. It's a really neat feature. Click on that, and now you can see as I hover over the curtain wall, all grid lines become selected. It's just a case of clicking, and I can populate the entire curtain wall instance with mullions with a single click. A final thing to note about mullions is that they are created in segments. So if I hover over a grid line, you can see the mullion that was placed here is actually made up of mullion segments. So I click on one, I can see its family and type. I can even delete just a segment of mullion. What you're seeing below there is the curtain grid, which remains intact, and also the two adjacent curtain panels. At the moment, our curtain wall is conventionally subdivided horizontally and vertically. But what if we want to do something a bit more creative with this curtain panel, i.e. we want to start combining some of these panels together to form a mosaic? We can do that. First of all, let's get rid of some of these segments of mullion. So if I select a mullion segment, press delete, I want to combine these two curtain panels together to form one big panel in this position. All I need to do is select the grid line itself, so it's the vertical curtain grid line I've got selected. And if I look up at the end of the ribbon menu, we have the option to add and remove segments of the grid line. So I'm going to click on that, and I simply click on the segment of grid line that I want to remove. Now just be careful when you do this, because as you hover over, there is no indication at all given by Revit that it's selecting that segment. You just have to trust that if you hover over it and you click, and now I deselect the grid line, you can see that it has in fact taken out just that segment. So if I hover over, you can see the rest of the grid line remains in place, as do the segments of mullion. However, that particular segment of grid line has been removed, and that has the effect of recombining the two adjacent curtain panels. That behaves as a single panel now, so if I tab through, I can select it. Again, remember I can swap that out for a different panel type if need be. Again, let's do it with this segment here to make an L-shaped panel. Just going to remove that mullion segment first, select the curtain grid line, and then remember it's add and remove segments, and remove the segment in question. So now we've got a single L-shaped curtain panel. Again, tab through till I select it. You can clearly see the curtain panel there. A common question that comes up with Revit is, what if I want to subdivide this panel horizontally? So I just want a cross member here but not on the rest of the panels. What you simply have to do in that instance is to add a curtain grid, then select the grid you've just put in and remove all the segments that you don't want. Cancel out that command, and now if I hover over, you can see the grid line does span the full width. It's just that the segments have been removed apart from the one that we wanted. So now that has the effect of subdividing that panel into two separate panels, and as there is a segment of grid line there, we can go to our mullion tool and that can actually host a mullion onto it. We've just seen how if we select a curtain panel that we can change its type and create new types within the properties palette, but we can also load in additional curtain panel families from the Autodesk library. I'm going to do that now. To do so, we need to go to the insert menu. So if you look along the top, go to insert, go to load family, and the folder you're looking for is curtain wall panels. Just be careful with that one. It's not curtain panel by pattern, that's something else. It's curtain wall panels. So if I have a look in here, there's a number of different families that have been created by Autodesk and that come with the software. I'm going to go down and choose that family there, pair of double doors with push bars. I'm going to open. That brings that curtain wall panel family into this project. What we need to do now is put it into our model. So I'm actually going to place it here. So to do so, I'm going to delete that piece of mullion, just as we did before. Remove that segment. Remember, highlight the curtain wall grid, add remove segments, click on the segment. I have now got a single panel that I can swap out for the one that I've just loaded. So if I hover the cursor over the edge of the panel, remember the use of the tab key. Each time you tap the tab key, it cycles through all the available elements it can find. Wait until your curtain panel is highlighted around its perimeter, then select it. That's what it currently is, system panel glazed. And if I look down in my type selector now, I can find the panel glass double door with push bar. Select that, and that curtain panel gets loaded in. The thing to note here is that curtain panels don't have any fixed size. They are just constrained by wherever the grid lines are around them. So for example, if those doors are too high, if I select that grid line which defines the top edge of the panel and just shift it down, the whole curtain panel gets squashed accordingly. So with doors, for instance, in curtain walls in Revit, you have to do a degree of backward engineering. So if you know the finite size of these doors, you would then set out your grid lines accordingly, allowing for the thickness of the frames, for example, and then place that curtain wall panel type into that position, and hopefully it'll be the right size. So you can fine tune it here. Remember, temporary dimensions we looked at works exactly the same with curtain walls. Just select the grid line, type in the distance if you know it, and it will adjust accordingly. A neat feature of Revit is that you can embed one wall type into another, and curtain walls are no exception. So for this example, I've got a piece of basic wall. Let's go back to a plan view. I'm now going to create a piece of curtain wall that I want embedded into this wall. So remember, wall, we look down till we find the curtain wall group, curtain wall empty. Now I'm going to just draw this new curtain wall on top of the first wall, and just before I do the second click, we'll warn you now that there's going to be an error message saying that the walls overlap. Don't worry about that, we'll talk about that when it happens. Here we go. So got an error message that the walls overlap. What we need to do now is to cut one wall out of the other. So if you look up on the menu, we've got the option to cut geometry. So first select the wall that you want to be cut, which is the main wall, and then select the wall that you want to do the cutting with, which is the curtain wall, and just hover over that carefully until the two end references highlight, and then select, and you'll notice that the curtain wall has now cut itself into the main wall. Let's switch to a 3D view to take a look at that, and there it is embedded. If I select the curtain wall, I can adjust its height. So this is great for doing sort of storefronts. You can even do high level clear story windows, hall windows, things like that. You've got access to all the normal wall parameters here, so if you want to control the base and the height of that curtain wall with levels, you can do so, just as we saw in the walls unit. If I switch back to my floor plan, just going to take that piece of curtain wall out again, just delete it. I'll just show you a slightly more efficient way of embedding that wall. So I go back to Architecture, Wall, Curtain Wall. Now before I define the curtain wall, I'm going to hit Edit Type. And near the top of the type parameters, there's a parameter there called Automatically Embed with a tick box. Now by default, that's not on when you get Revit. You may want to go in and set this in your template. Tick that to Automatically Embed. And basically that cuts out the extra step of using that cut geometry command. So now if I draw my curtain wall over the top of my regular wall, it goes straight in, embeds and cuts itself out. So I don't have to use that cut geometry tool. Switch to my 3D view and there it is as before. Obviously there will be times when your curtain wall needs to go around a corner, and a common question is how do we do that in Revit? I'm going to show you quickly now how we achieve that. So Architecture, Wall, Curtain Wall Empty. Just going to do 2 sections of curtain wall. That's all we need just to use that as an example. Cancel out the wall command. Just have a quick look in 3D. We zoom in. There's our 2 pieces of curtain wall. You'll notice that the curtain wall panels don't meet at the corner as they stand now. So the first thing I'm going to do is add mullions. I'm going to go with that 50 by 150 rectangular mullion to all grid lines. Cancel out of that. Now the important thing to note here is that we added mullions to each curtain wall separately, and you can see there clearly the mullions at the corner have doubled up. All we need to do is take out one of the mullions, doesn't matter which one, select the other mullion, and what you need to do now is swap that one out for a corner mullion. So we've got various corner mullions, a V corner mullion, quad corner mullion. I'm going to pick that one for now for this example, 150 by 150 quad corner mullion. And you can see that particular mullion family is designed to go round a corner. Let's just select it again. Let's look at an L corner mullion. So we've got that sort of arrangement. Or down at the bottom we've got a V corner mullion. We'll go like that. So the trick with curtain walls that go around corner is to add your mullions in. Make sure you just have one mullion at the corner, be it on one panel or the other, and then swap that mullion out for one that is specifically listed as going round a corner. So far in this unit I've shown you how to build up a curtain wall system from scratch. However, this can be very time consuming if the curtain walls that you regularly work with always have a fixed distance between their horizontal and vertical grid lines. In this scenario, it's much more efficient to predefine a curtain wall type and set those fixed distances into the type parameters. I'm going to show you how to do that now. So let's switch to a floor plan. Just going to delete this piece of wall we've got in there at the moment. I'm going to go to Wall. I'm going to pick Curtain Wall Storefront. So if I just activate the drop down type selector, that's what we worked with previously, but now I'm going to pick this curtain wall type. I'm going to edit type, duplicate. I'll leave the same name and just leave the 2 added to the end of it for now. And you can see here in the type properties we can actually define the distances between the horizontal grid and for the vertical grid. So layout of the vertical grid, I'm actually going to change that to a fixed distance, and I want those to be 1800 between them. And horizontal grid, I'll also have that as a fixed distance, and I'll leave that at 2400. OK that. OK, let's put a piece of this new curtain wall type into our model. Switch to a 3D view, and there you can see we generated an instance of curtain wall complete with subdivisions at the distances we specified in the type properties. And you can see if I increase the height, length of that wall, those subdivisions get created automatically. You'll appreciate that's a much more efficient way of putting curtain wall into your model, where you already know what those distances need to be, rather than starting with a blank piece of curtain wall and adding all those grid lines manually.
And that completes this unit. To get the most out of this training material, please take the complete course online at bimscape.com. Here you will find a complete learning management system that allows you to work through the course at your own pace. Comprehensive written tutorials provide additional information to that found in the training videos. Mark each unit as complete as you finish it and move on to the next. At any point you can return to any of the units you have previously completed to go over the material again. If you'd like to take this course online, please visit www.bimscape.com/Revit for details.